Today, the virtual conference experience revisited with Jake Rozmaryn of Antenna Group and co-founder of Midwest Solar Expo. I'm Tim Montague, your host. Welcome to SolarWorks for Illinois. Today, we're going to get back with Jake Rozmaryn. Welcome back to the show, Jake.
It's wonderful to be back. Thanks for having me.
Just a few short weeks ago, we were at the virtual Midwest Solar Expo, the virtual 3D, and you guys set up a wonderful 3D experience using a platform called Virbella. It was very unique. All of the participants set up an avatar. You and I did another recording prior to the conference, so our listeners can check that out on YouTube. But tell us just revisit, what was the inspiration for going 3D virtual?
We wanted to do something that was going to be a really unique and interesting experience for everyone that participated. We felt that there was a staleness that was surrounding the Zoom conference type of platform that we'd seen a lot of people roll out very quickly. And we wanted to facilitate more organic encounters that you would typically get at an in-person event that were really absent in the virtual events that we saw popping up. So a big part of it was a desire to connect people and enable them to network in a way that's familiar to them and in a way that they know is going to be effective.
For sure. And we are living in the age of COVID recovery, or just COVID. And unfortunately, the United States isn't recovering as quickly as we all hoped. We're experiencing a resurgence right now of infections and deaths from COVID. So safety is on everybody's mind. And, major conferences like SPI have rejiggered their event. They have announced that they're going to move it to Las Vegas and do more of an outdoor event. I predict that that is going to be very challenging, and many people will stay away because of what's going on with the virus. But let's dive into what our experience was and what some of the users that we know experiences were. The users, the participants, that's what I mean when I say user, and then the speakers. And I was a panelist. I was a moderator on a panel, so I got to, stand on the stage and see what that experience was like. And overall, I have to say that my expectations were met. I was able to walk up to people, have a conversation with them, revisit with people that I knew, meet some new faces. I made several great connections with Jake Anderson, for example, of Anderson Optimization, with John Delury of Vote Solar. Super excited about these young bucks who are taking the industry by storm and really making major contributions to the solar industry at a young age, like yourself. But so what feedback have you gotten from participants overall, Jake?
The feedback has been really good. I didn't know what to expect when I was gonna, and I opened up the review pack for the first, from the first survey. And what was interesting is we had more attendee survey feedback this year than any other year. So people were really eager to give feedback. And I think a lot of that might be because I was saying, this is an experiment, right? This is the first time we're doing this. Let's see how, let's make the most of it and embrace it and see how it goes, right? But people, I think, were really excited by the technology and by the way that they were able to interact with people. And that was, pretty consistent across the board. And, I think that there were certainly limitations of the technology. There were certainly areas where we think the technology fell short. And I think people were pretty forgiving to that in general, right? We have hundreds of people going to the event. This is, very new technology. This is very, big software. And so, very complex software. That I think is intuitive once you're in, but getting it set up correctly and getting everything, having a seamless experience, right? It takes a little bit of patience, and we know people have tech anxiety and things like that. So we think people were pretty understanding of that. I think our team did a great job, managing those types of issues. But overall, really positive experience, and certainly lots of lessons learned that we're going to be applying to all the events, all the virtual events moving forward.
Indeed. now you're in the catbird seat on some new technology. This 3D tech is pretty slick. The world is 3D, and you can even interact with mock-ups of 3D products. So I'm looking forward to seeing how the tech is embraced and evolving. The thing that stood out for me was that you basically were able to replicate a conference experience, right? You've got large sessions, small sessions, you've got networking breakouts, you've got exhibits and private meetings. So the nuts and the bolts of a conference experience were there and available. You had to be a little more diligent in a way to really get the most out of that. You had to be curious. You had to be a little adventuresome. And but that's true of an in-person thing too, right? You have to be outgoing, even if you're an introvert, if you're really going to get the most of a conference experience, right? And meet new
Totally.
people, make new connections, and learn some new things. I will say for me, the highlight was getting to see Dan Sugar speak. I'd never seen Dan speak live, so to speak. And he focused on the Midwest, so that was nice. He could have talked about many things, but he stayed true to the theme of the conference. And, you know, he highlighted some interesting factoids, like that there's 66 gigawatts of solar in the MISO queue here in the Midwest, 66 gigawatts. And that's an amazing amount of solar.
Incredible.
You know, we're working on getting 3 gigawatts here in Illinois. And most of the Midwest states have less than a gigawatt, with the exception of Minnesota, who is a good 5 years ahead of all of the other Midwestern states. And then when I was moderating the panel, both of the speakers had a fine experience. We had a private meeting to figure out what we were going to talk about. And then they're on stage, I'm asking questions. The audience is asking questions, and I think that was basically a good experience. And we were able to slot, you know, one of the cool things about this is we were able to slot in Catherine Kanoy, who used to be the sustainability guru for Walmart. Now she works for C2 Energy Capital, which is a solar developer out of New York City, developing portfolios of big box stores. That kind of dynamic swapping of panelists most likely could not have happened with a sticks and bricks event, right? Where somebody was, you know, already had a plane ticket, et cetera, et cetera. So that's also an advantage, is that you can think on your toes. And I think that actually made that panel much more valuable to our audience.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I mean, like, you know, it does make it more accessible like that, and obviously during COVID, it's especially important. But like, I mean, think about the subject matter, and think about how, you know, the virtual conference experience is so aligned with our mission day to day, right? The environmental impact of conferences, everyone flying in, shipping booth supplies. You know, there's a tremendous amount of waste in conferences. And so this is what a fabulous bridging of, you know, sustainability and practice to the way we conduct business at these events.
Yeah, the ecological footprint of a virtual event is but a fraction. I would argue it's probably 1% or less of a normal event, and that's worth something.
Absolutely.
We are not all going to be flying around the world the way we used to be, for a variety of reasons. First and foremost, our safety and well-being, but we also are increasingly cognizant of our carbon footprint when we travel, and it's non-trivial. As I was saying to my dad the other day, you know, we need to save our fossil fuels. They're a tremendous resource. Right now, we're just burn, baby, burn. Like there's no tomorrow, but there may come a day when we really, really want those for a whole variety of reasons. Let's say there's a medium-sized meteor strike and we have a mini ice age, right? And solar is completely diminished because we have clouds circling the earth 24/7. Then you really want fossil fuels, right? So I'm not
Yep.
saying don't burn fossil fuels. I'm saying treat them like the amazing resource they are, and use other technologies that we have at our fingertips that are smarter and more affordable now. So anyway, I digress.
But it's
So,
true. All important, really important.
so as
keep
an
all these
organizer,
things
though,
in mind.
Jake, tell me a little more about your personal experience, and what were some of the highlights for you?
So, the personal experience, you always walk away from these things where, you're like, oh, a million things can go wrong, but for the most part, when it comes to events, like you have a lot of, you control a lot of the variables. And when you're doing an event like this, there's a big technology variable that you can work really hard to de-risk, right? But there's a lot that you just will not be able to control. To a much more significant extent than in an in-person event. So that is kind of always going to shadow, right? Shadow this type of experience. But I think overall it was a good experience, and I'm excited. I think I'm certainly excited about the direction. It was a huge amount of work to make sure that we were onboarding everyone in advance. Instead of a 2-day in-person event, we spent 2 weeks before the conference spending our days just doing training with people, making sure that they're comfortable with the platform. And obviously that goes down, the amount of time you have to invest in that moving forward goes down, but still, a big learning curve for when you have such a large event with so many stakeholders that are participating in different ways, shapes, and forms. So that, that was a big undertaking. But really, also just really, really positive, right? It was a really positive experience. It was really innovative. That was, really captured and appreciated, from all the participants. We're definitely excited about doing more events like this moving forward.
We don't have a choice. If we want to have professional events, we have to figure out new and better ways of having virtual conferences. And you mentioned Zoom early on, and we're recording this using Zoom. So Zoom has its place, and Zoom is a wonderful tool. One of the features I like about Zoom for large groups, I participate in a weekly Passive House gathering of people from around the world. And there's upwards of 250 people on this Zoom call. And one of the features is you can do breakout sessions, and you can just go zoop, and you push a button and it automatically divides the audience into 20 different breakout rooms with 5 people in them. And then you can, have a few minutes of getting to know people on a more intimate manner, right, that you can't do in a large group. And then you, at the click of a button, everybody's back in the main venue, back on the agenda, so to speak. And so I do think that technology is quite powerful when you use all of the nooks and crannies and features of that technology. Virbella is a totally different animal. You're setting up a avatar and then functioning in the world through the avatar, using your real voice, hopefully, through the computer, and that generally worked. There were some hiccups getting Windows to cooperate and use the right sound device and so forth, and I'm sure that I don't know the half of it. I had a few hiccups myself, but that was probably a stressor on your staff and on the Virbella staff perhaps. But over time, those things will get ironed out, and that'll just work. So as you and I were talking in the pre-show, though, one of the things I missed of that when you're an avatar is you don't get to see a person's facial expressions. And we are very attuned communicators to facial expressions and subtle muscle movements. We make split decisions while we're in conversation with people about, how we're responding. Are we liking what we're hearing? Are we liking them? Are we trusting them? Or are we tuning out or mistrusting them? And that is so deep in in our evolution, in our being. So I'm curious, how do you transcend that?
Well, I mean, I do think that the tool will become more sophisticated, and so that you'll be able to see kind of beyond, I'm talking, here's a little thing above my head. Like, I think there will be more like movement there. I have seen some technologies that are more headset based that are capturing emotion in that regard. And so it is kind of projecting the emotions onto the avatar, which is obviously a big leap forward to crack what you're, what you're referencing. I also think that there's an opportunity to incorporate more video, right? So, only a week before the conference, Virbella rolled out webcam share and screen share, right? So now that's going to keep getting better. And so if you have the ability to then, have a conversation with someone and click the webcam on, and then you can just, have the conversation like that. Obviously that would be, a big win, for people that, are less comfortable with the avatar-based approach.
Yeah, like when you're in a private room, just sitting, having a chat, right? Why not pop into a video conference and actually see the person? I think that would be a nice feature.
Yeah,
and one
I think this time around, it was very much like, we want to do as much as we can do to get people to embrace the platform. Even if there's a limitation, even if there's some limitations around it, like the best shot of success is if people are ultimately trying to embrace it. And I think moving forward, there'll be more room for, flexibility, and, now you'll have a chance to do trial and error with different formats. But I can certainly see a scenario where we're incorporating more live video into even into the next event. And so that will start with presenters having the ability to move to live video. But it will, the next phase of that would be individuals being able to move to live video as well.
Yep. And then what did speakers have to say overall? Do you have a separate pool of feedback from speakers versus just participants?
So, the feedback is mixed together, but, I think the feedback overall is, if you didn't have any issues with the tech, then it was great. There were, like I mentioned in the pre-show, I think of somewhere between 70 and 80 speakers in the end. I think 5 or 6 speakers had some kind of a technical issue. Some were resolved by calling in and being like on speakerphone essentially. And then I think there was maybe 1 or 2 people that couldn't even participate in the end because of tech issues. To that group, I say, that's why we were getting people in a week early, 2 weeks early. If you try to set it up last minute, you might run into a problem, right?
And there's always going to be last minute challenges, even in a face-to-face. People miss planes, flights get canceled, people get sick. So life is imperfect, and I embrace that. And I guess it's been a little bit of a up and down for me. At first I was super excited. Then I kind of got very used to it and a little numb. And then afterwards, just thinking more about it, what's present for me is just, I met some great people that I didn't know before. And that's what I came away from, in 2019, that I met some great people. I grew my network, and that's one of the primary reasons. There's great content in the talks, and I enjoyed some of those talks as well. And I honestly long for the ability to witness more of that content. So I know you and I were talking about making more of the conference content evergreen. Can you address that at all?
Yeah, right. For the first event, it was going to be a very significant undertaking. We probably needed to nearly double the resources on hand, and we had something like 12 staff members supporting the event at any point in time. And so we didn't end up doing it this time around. three sessions were actually live streamed on Facebook and LinkedIn. Those were a part of the Suncast Daily Show presented by LG, which was fantastic, led by Nico Johnson. I participated in a couple of those, and so that was that content was actually a bit more evergreen. But they'd also provided sort of a daily recap of what was going on at the show, key takeaways, things like that. So that was certainly informative, and it went live to folks outside of the conference. So those were actually the only sessions. It was the only view into the conference for anyone that wasn't there, which is pretty cool.
So there's nothing that stops you while you're in Virbella from doing a live broadcast from, say, Facebook Live or YouTube Live or LinkedIn Live. Is that right?
Well, we had third-party tools that we were using to basically screen capture and stream.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, but then we would have needed basically 2 people extra in each room in order to accommodate the staffing to do it effectively.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
So what is on your mind about looking forward? Are there other conferences besides the Midwest Solar Expo that you're involved with that will be using this or similar technology?
Yeah, I mean, as you can imagine, a lot of organizations have reached out to us and are, interested in collaborating in different ways, shapes, and forms. So we're eager to help others leverage this type of technology, for sure. And we are seeing company SPI, is moving to a virtual platform. I haven't seen it yet, but I don't believe it's any kind of a similar experience to what we put out. And everyone is kind of doing their own. I know Mincia is doing a virtual conference. I think that's more of like a Zoom-based approach, more like webinar series, but could be wrong on that. So we're going to see more platforms being used, but we're certainly spending a lot of time right now meeting with different organizations, helping them think through their virtual event experience. It's not just event organizers too, right? Like it's companies that are we're having several conversations now. Companies that attended the Midwest Solar Expo, they're like, we were going to launch a product at SPI. We're not going to do that this year. What kind of virtual experience should we be thinking about? So it kind of extends, Virbella is obviously applicable, but it kind of expands beyond, Virbella.
And when you think about 2021, do you think that the merits of Virbella, despite some of the challenges, are going to bring you back?
I can certainly see us incorporating a Virbella type of experience into a significant portion of in-person events that we do moving forward. And it's something we may have touched on briefly last time, but in the future, I see these types of platforms essentially providing a digital twin of the in-person conference. So, as part of that conference experience, you can have, 2 or 3 people from your team attend in person. And then you can have 10 people of your team benefit from the education and do some other networking by participating virtually, right? And when you get an in-person booth, a part of that, you bolt on a digital booth, right? And so I do see it moving forward. But, I think in-person events are really important in the same way that, Zoom has its place, right? And Virbella has its place, right? Like these are, ultimately, I think we're going to do a lot better with in-person events moving forward. I think people are going to be smarter about how they approach them. And people are going to be smarter about how they participate virtually. And there's going to be all these new ways of doing so. The technology that exists today is okay, and we found one that we think is especially compelling, but 6 months down the line, 12 months down the line, the amount of money being invested in virtual event and virtual experiences in companies that are innovating in this space is tremendous. So, I think it's going to take, like I said, 6 to 12 months, maybe 18 months in some cases. We're going to see a ton of startups, and then bigger players like Snap, which is working on like augmented reality technology for events now. We're going to see, really interesting products come to market. So I'm excited about it. I mean, I think we'll be using Virbella, but I can see us using a host of other technologies that come out.
So here's an idea that just occurred to me, and that it's related to crowdsourcing. When you go to a conference, typically there's an agenda, there's breakouts, there's a schedule. And while that's a good and necessary thing, there's also an opportunity for self-organization and more input from the participants to self-organize and create almost like special interest groups. I wonder if anybody's working on a platform like that. I heard an interview with the founder of WordPress, and his company is working distributed, and they are convinced that they're more effective in a distributed company orientation. They don't have a physical office anymore. And I get it. But you also have to create tools for collaboration, and email is not a very good collaboration tool. So they've transcended that. They have, it's a form of a blog that is shared company-wide. And I don't fully understand it because I haven't seen it, but that kind of a thing would be super valuable to create less of this hierarchy. It tends to be very hierarchical. Like you have a speaker badge or you don't. You have an organizer badge or you don't. And yet all of us have tremendous indigenous knowledge and connections that are valuable. And it's unlocking that is the challenge and the opportunity.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, on the point of, them moving to a external, or I think the WordPress example in terms of them moving to, this new collaboration format, right, and getting rid of their offices. Keep in mind, Virbella was built as a tool for remote distributed teams to collaborate. It wasn't an event tool. We repurposed it for events. But it was marketed as a future of work tool. And so the implications for this technology around events are obviously, it's obviously huge, but yeah, I mean, everyone's rethinking, the office of the future, do I need to be hiring in the same markets, right? Like we certainly are, at Antenna going through that evaluation process right now. So yeah, I mean, the implications for future of work are enormous with these technologies.
So like there were exhibit rooms, I would like there to be sandboxes that any participant can put a sign on the wall saying, this is the solar and storage play sandbox. If you're interested in solar and storage, come talk to us.
Yeah, so we're actually, that's one thing that we would be incorporating into the next events, which are basically the ability to have themed rooms, themed networking tables and areas around key topics. So that is a nice way to keep everyone, or give everyone the ability to do that self-organizing.
Yep. And podcasting, for example, I would love to connect with more podcasters. I'm, starting to get more connected to other podcasters like Nico Johnson, and but I'm sure there's a lot more there than I'm aware of. So we just need to put the flag and see what happens.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Podcasting is a good, that's a good theme table to incorporate into the next event. So we'll have to, maybe you'll lead that table conversation.
Yeah, happy to champion that cause for sure. It's augmented my life in so many wonderful ways, and so I just can't. I can't get enough, as the saying goes.
Yeah, well, it's definitely been going great, and have had the chance to listen to a bunch of episodes, and so it's great to see the Solar Works for Illinois podcast continuing to grow.
Well, Jake, what parting thoughts would you like to leave our listeners with? For me, it's for anyone interested in the solar industry, whether you're in it or getting into it, please sign up for these virtual events. They're so valuable and so safe and so affordable in the greater scheme of things. So it's such a great way to jumpstart your knowledge base and your network, or grow those things if you're 10 years or 20 years into the industry. And of course, every stage has different wants, needs, desires. But I just say do it and embrace it, because it's here, and it's here to stay.
Yeah, here. I totally agree with you on that. And as people, as everyone is kind of thinking about their virtual engagement and digital engagement, strategy, would love to talk with anyone that's looking to explore doing things different in that area. And we're always, we're always looking for companies to collaborate with, and so. We're certainly interested and available in doing that. So looking forward to chatting with more people about this, and helping to connect more people, for the new normal.
How can people find you, Jake?
LinkedIn is usually the best way, which is just Jake Rozmaryn on LinkedIn, or jake.rozmaryn at Antenna Group over email.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for organizing the Midwest Solar Expo. I think it was a resounding success, and I look forward to similar and other events, and of course to 2021. Thanks everybody for listening. I'm Tim Montague, your host. SolarWorks for Illinois is available at cesnrg.com/podcast. Thank you, Jake, for joining us.